Number 4, challenges facing us in the modern day world. And what I'd like to do is start off with a little recap. We've gone over a series of different types of graphs and charts and concepts that have to do with innovation. And I hope what you've walked away with so far is that somewhere in the world there's somebody trying to come up with a technology or a solution or a modification to what you're doing, and you're constantly going to have to be innovating or looking outward to see if there's any technologies you could bring in-house to avoid being disrupted upon or be a disruptor for somebody else. I hope with that information you've already initiated the mental thinking to say, what can you do? And I remember having this conversation with Rasmus Borsten from Oticon. They're in the hearing aid business, and he's from Denmark. He was running the US operations, and you could say there was a competition going on. There's the European branding marketing people, and then there were the United States branding marketing people. And the people in Europe, what they decided to do is they were going to focus on this technology called Bluetooth. They felt it was very important to share that they were a technology-oriented company, and that if they put Bluetooth in place, you're going to make better sales, and that people are going to buy it. What they found was this, in that space. And if you want to think about it for a minute, the customer for hearing aids tend to be older people. So if you tell someone you've got a Bluetooth, they might be thinking they have to go to a dentist not to get their ears looked at. Rasmus did something different, be a little innovative, and this is something that you should have done anyway. It's being customer-centric. He went to his father, who was getting older, and said, who wore hearing aids, do you mind if you try the hearing aids out? And I want you to tell me exactly what you think, what you feel, what does this technology do? And what the Bluetooth technology did was allow the two earpieces to kind of communicate with one another and give a more three-dimensional sound. So when his father put them in, something really amazing happened. His father is wearing them and he says, I can see better. He says, no, Dad, you can hear better. No, I can see better. What he described was, by having the Bluetooth sound, this unification of sound, he can sense where the sound was coming from and therefore knew where to turn. He could see better because the sound was interacting with the sounds that you had with his eyesight. And you and I don't think about that if we've got decent sound, because we know that if something bangs, we look over there, but if you've only got one ear, you can't triangulate and find it. So it's pretty amazing. And they marketed in the States that this was a technology to help you see better, to be more emotionally oriented. And they did phenomenally well as compared to the European side of the organization. Mars, another company, products have been around for 100 years, has been innovating and innovating and innovating. They've, from packaging and labeling, from warehouse to distribution to marketing to you name it, across the board they've been innovating. It doesn't matter, 50-year-old products, in order for it to be sustainable, just like several videos ago we talked about French's mustard. Mars has been constantly involved in the innovation challenge. So what I'd like to do is I'd like you to take a jump now. I'd like to take a mental jump to realize that I've shown you imagery, and all the imagery I'd ever seen in my life was these S-curves. And the reality of innovation is that the S-curve is not the only thing going on. I want you to picture the same S-curve, but imagine that there are S-curves happening all the time. Everybody's innovating, and they're right on top of each other. So what used to be 50 years ago, someone came up with the technology, would just be in your geography. You'd be able to sell it, use it, merge it, and it was a protected environment. And as the communication tools changed, as our ability to fly changed, as pricing came down, a variety of factors that went into this, media changed, that was no longer the case. Today, a young person in Mumbai could sell something tomorrow in Cape Town or in London. That could not have happened years ago. So the competition in London or in Cape Town or Dubai was their local geography. I knew that this person was selling it. There would be one importer, one franchise. Today, you could have 40 people selling in the same space. What does this mean? It means margin compression. It means profitability is tougher when you have margin compression. You make less money per sale, per engagement. You have to be better at the innovation internally to be able to leverage or take out friction and add improvements to the customer or the experience that people have using your product, service, or experience that you're looking to deliver. In addition to that, one of the challenges that you run into is that when you're looking at this curve, is that you have very little time to develop as you used to in the past. You could have a cycle that took you 2-3 years to develop a product or service or whatever we've been talking about. I'm not going to go over it each time. It kind of becomes redundant for me and monotonous for you. You now might have 2 months to install something that 6 years ago it took you 2 years. Everything has to happen faster because the curves are happening faster, and you have to be able to get the opportunity out of what you've delivered faster. So let me give you an example. Sony, Panasonic, and Samsung at one point were developing a 3D television, and they required you to wear, for about $3,000 US, and it required you to wear 3D glasses. And they put it out there, and not long after, small size though, Toshiba comes out and says, we have a 3D television that you need no glasses. So they had invested R&D for years to come up with a 3D technology. You had to wear glasses, and Toshiba, kind of like stepping on top of them, says, oh my God, here it comes out. We've got something better. I can't share the company, but a good friend of mine who's very high up in a very big technology company had for years been working on this platform. It's one of the largest deals in history of a major corporation. And the day they're making the announcement, somebody else made an announcement about something in another space that completely took, not completely, but took a lot of the thunder away. Because there's so much going on, competing for space and trying to win is challenging. Now, if we were to take that alone, that's a new conceptual side of understanding. Got a loud motorcycle. Conceptually, you could see that you have to really be good at what you do. And you have tools already. Paid to think, if you've gotten to this far, you've already got tools. But let me add one more piece to this innovation challenge. In the face of innovation, you have changes, macroeconomic changes. You have the realities of innovation that happen because economically things change, financially change, market changes, weather changes, there's hurricanes, there's tornadoes. There are things that happen in life that just throw things off. And I happen to be saying it while standing in Hong Kong. Over the past few years, there have been an uprising of certain people that against the Chinese government about things that they didn't like. And there was something called the yellow umbrella concept, or stand-ins and protesting. And many of you might have heard about it. I didn't live far from it in Mongkok while this was going on. And a lot of things happened. I'm not going to go into the politics of it. However, in October of last year, the Chinese government may be fed up. I don't know the internal workings. Maybe they just decided that they were going to do something to hurt Hong Kong. They changed the law that the people who live in China, the PRC, People Republic of China individuals, could not visit Hong Kong in the same frequency they could before. Before, they could come across the border all they wanted. And Hong Kong was the #1 visited place for Chinese tourists. 50 million visitors a year were included. Many of them were Chinese. In 1 month, the economy within Hong Kong just rapidly changed. Restaurants were not busy. They weren't being profitable. Major luxury brands not having the sales. Real estate started to plummet. It was a macro change, or a change that happened. I'm going to use the real world, the macro reality. It's not the macro. It's the conditional shifts in the S-curve. A conditional shift happened. And what it did was it really just changed everything that's happening in this community. And there's been a readjustment to it. Now, is this something you can prepare for? Yes and no. Yes, if you're forecasting, predicting, out, learning, being aware. No, because sometimes you just can't predict a hurricane or a change in weather and patterns that you weren't sure of. The thing is if you do, not the thing is, I would say the experience has shown that if you have spend a little bit more time understanding that there are conditional shifts, you can be prepared for them, at least in modeling and scenario development. Let me give you an example. Today, we've found out that the what's the name of it? Britex?
Brexit.
Brexit. Forgot the name. Brexit was passed in the UK for the removal out of the EU. The markets have been going crazy in terms of who is betting on what. No one's know what the future is going to be. Cameron resigned today. A lot of things happened, and they've been talking about it for a long time. Conditional shift happened. And there are companies that are going to be prepared for it, and companies who are not. Organizations prepared for it, organizations not. If you had a scenario modeled out, different scenarios, you might be one of those people who could take advantage of it. Now, how might that impact you? On your end, you might be able to look at what you do every day and say, our volume spiked. What happened? We got more phone calls. We got more of this. There were more calls. There were more requests. There were less requests. What happened in that drop? And you could start to identify types of conditional shifts that make a difference to you. Now, I've mentioned this before, I believe, in videos, but nothing in Paid to Think was not used in the real world first before it entered into the book. So in the book, I did add a story that was very personal. In 2008, somewhere in that time frame, Lori and I were sitting down talking about what was happening in the world. And I do a lot of forecasting for organizations. They ask me to tell them what they think the future in industry may be, or their product, or their service. And what happened was we started to see some writings on the wall. Writings on the wall means some messaging that we saw was inconsistent. We had a large organization, government organization, cancel every project within their entire scope. And didn't cancel one of ours, we just didn't end up getting the project. And I also was sitting down with a lot of people in New York City that I knew who were involved in the real estate sector, and we saw things happening. And what we decided to do as a company, as an organization, is do two things. One, we decided to go international. We were primarily domestic with some international work. We did full bore international expansion. And we focused on the Asia Pacific region. So while my friends in my industry, whether it be speaking, consulting, doesn't matter, large and small, were hemorrhaging, they were bringing in, they were laying off people, our business accelerated and we had our best years going forward. We saw the conditional shifts happening. We practiced what we preached. And in doing so, we didn't miss a beat. Today, I'm actually seeing that happening in Asia, and our business has been readjusting once again. So, messages in this, you've got two new tools to be thinking about, two new concepts to be thinking about. One of them is the conditional shifts, to be aware that they do happen and be on the lookout for them, because there are signs that they're coming. The second is that there are always other people innovating in the same space. And I would suggest that you are more aware of margin compression, making sure you use the tools of Pay to Think to deliver what you do and to win in the market space. So whatever you do, these four are going to be the foundational components of the rest of the innovation chapter. So there you go.